The following podcast will contain sounds of violence and gore.
That was my best gore sound, to be honest.
Algor.
Algor. What's an Algor sound?
An algorithm.
Is that just Al Gore playing the drums?
Doing some beats.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
Well, here we are, episode 80 of the Gaming Lovers Podcast, but there's been a hostile takeover, or maybe not so hostile, depending on your attitude today. I don't actually know. How are you feeling?
There'll be no hostility. I'm very tired and fatigued. It is me, the good brother, Mr. Steve here, fresh off the little good niece, little Isabel being
good
born.
Niece. He has the good niece now. 2 children have arrived. No time for gaming, no doubt, for the good brother, Mr. Steve, but that's okay.
Well, that's why we're going back in time to discuss a time when I didn't have the tiredness that I currently have from having 2 kids. We're going back to late 90s.
That's right. It's not going to be just the good brother, Mr. Steve. It's the good resident, Mr. Stevel. Because we are going...
The resident Stevel. I like it.
Stevel. We're talking classic Resident Evil games for Spooky Month.
Yep.
We're talking everything pre-Gamecube. If it was on a console before the Gamecube entries of the remake and Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 4, they hit a boom at that time. But we're taking it back before then because I don't know if you are the same, but the early Resident Evil games, probably among my first spooky games.
Correct. Same for me as well. Before then, the spookiest game maybe I played was Mickey Mouse Castle of Illusion.
Which you can play now on the Mega Drive Mini. So if you want to revisit the terror of playing a hard nostalgic platformer, you can indeed relive that. But before we get too deep into Green Herb territory, it sounds like a drug reference. Didn't mean it to. It's healing. It's medicinal. We need to cover gaming goals for this week. My dear wife, Jem, out of action this week with a cold. Hashtag get well soon, Jem. So the good brother stepped in. It is spooky month. So who better than...
Who else to scare you better than me? We've had a long history in Resi, so it's good to be talking about something that we've probably been talking about for the last 20 years. Well, maybe not 20 years. That's probably too far. But...
You can tell that you and Resident Evil are on a tight timeline here because you've called it Resi straight off the bat.
Oh, did I?
You're a bit too comfortable with the topic. And in my gaming goals this week, I have been playing, guess what? A Resident Evil game. All these years later.
Oh, perfect. Well, they do bring a new one out every couple of years. I believe there's another one coming out soon that, I'm not sure if that's going to be on your backlog or your gaming goals for the future. But...
If it's going to be on my backlog, it'll just be on my shelf, not to be played for several years. There are actually 2 Resident Evil games that are rumoured in the... pipeline from Raccoon City's sewage department.
Oh, we know all about their sewage, don't we?
There is a confirmed multiplayer 4 versus 1 asymmetrical multiplayer game called Project Resistance, but the RE, it has to have an RE if it's a Resident Evil game of any sort. The RE must be a different colour in Resistance. And Resident Evil 8 has not been officially announced, but it is heavily rumoured. And which direction that will take, whether it will be a over-the-shoulder like Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2 remake style, which has been getting quite a bit of buzz this year. It's going to be topping a lot of top game lists from 2019. Or... will it follow its direct predecessor, the game I have been playing, and we've looped back around to on topic, Resident Evil 7?
Yeah, because that is first person.
It is first person. It is a slick game, man. Even just from its menus, it is slick. The font is slick. Everything about it is slick. The blood pools on the floor look slick.
Well, they must have been having some blood thinners in that game. That is pooling out very well. I've seen only a little bit of that game from your YouTube channel.
Yep.
Where can we watch that again?
Just track down Hyper Brendo on YouTube or check out any of our links at thegaminglovers.com.
And so far from what I've seen, that game does look pretty spooky. So perfect for spooky month.
It's perfect for spooky month. Third session down, and I'll probably leave the big details to the final verdict, but this game keeps bringing the hits and occasionally the frustrations, but that may just be because of my lack of skill. I'm not the gamer I used to be, clearly, and it never is that more obvious than when I am being broadcast the world and archived online.
And now, is that making you feel like you've got to be more macho and not jump at something that scares you? And you're just like, that was nothing.
Jump scares in this game, it's got me a couple times. One that really did get me quite badly. I did not expect what happened. I think it was in my maybe the first clip. Something happened. It startled me so bad. But it's more just the tension of you want to explore, but you don't want to explore. You want to get out of the house that you're in at the start, and then you open that door and you're like, oh, now I'm in the gardens. I'm in the swamp. I'm in the greenhouse. I want to go back to the safety of the house that was scary. I don't want to go to new scary places. I want the old scary places.
And dim lighting never helps that. Not knowing what's 2 feet ahead of you.
This game is very dim, and it also has a little dynamic that happens every now and again in games these days. But if you are outside in the daylight and you go into your dark house, you can't see a thing for the first few seconds. And in this game, if you're in a bright room and you go into darkness, it doesn't matter if you've just stepped out of the light or if you've gone into an entirely new room, you are technically blind for like a second. And when you first open a creaky door, it's not just push a button and retreat and the door opens. You actually have to push the door open.
Yep.
So you're pushing and you can just see blackness inside. And that is terrifying when you actively have to walk into a room and you don't know where the furniture is, where any nasty people are, where the nearest health item is. It's terrifying for that 1 second every time you go into a new area. You can't see a thing, and that is just one of those little touches that makes this game so spooky. So spooky. And of course, being a Resident Evil game, it wouldn't be a Resident Evil game if you weren't backtracking occasionally with a new key.
Oh, for sure.
You find locked doors, and in this case, it is different animals representing different doors. You have scorpion, you have bird, you have frog, I don't know. But you might open 2 of those out of the 3, but then you won't get the 3rd key until much later, in which case you're thinking, what new tricks and traps have they set for me in the time I've been away?
They knew I'm roaming around looking for this frog key. They know that I'm going to get it. Let's make some traps, maybe release some new fiends.
Yeah, well, look, it wouldn't be Resident Evil without fiends of some sort, and we have fiends in this game, and it's getting me nervous talking about it. I'm not even playing.
Should we change the subject slightly?
Slightly.
Because we're going to go back to Resident Evil, of course.
We will. There will be much Resident Evil talk, and it is a pioneering game as far as horror games go, making them mainstream. It revived zombie culture in the mid-90s, so, we wouldn't have things like The Walking Dead today if it wasn't for Resident Evil.
That's true.
So there will be more Resident Evil talk. But for gaming goals, a game came out this week that I was not anticipating playing on launch. And I did, and Resident Evil 7, which was my primary goal, has been bumped to second in the totem pole.
Oh.
Now, I won't...
Is that second from the bottom or second from the top?
In some cultures, it's one way. Some cultures, it's the other way. I don't know how it works here. The game is called The Outer Worlds. And considering I had a game I played earlier this year called The Outer Wilds, which also came out of nowhere to my attention, my end-of-year campaign for favourite game is going to get very confusing because every time I go to say The Outer Wilds, I say The Outer Worlds and vice versa. So if I muck up, I'm talking right now about The Outer Worlds. The reason why I played it on launch was because A, I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to be as good as it is, and B, it was included in a subscription that I had already paid for.
Oh, perfect.
And so The Outer Worlds launched on the Xbox Game Pass. I had to pay a total of $0 more to play it. and I got it on launch. So Xbox Game Pass continues to hit the thumbs up. I was a huge doubter on that whole gaming subscription nonsense before I signed on.
So how much would that game have been retail on launch?
Australian dollars.
Australian
You're
dollars.
looking at least 80.
$80.
Yes.
And
full
you got it for free.
Retail release. And I got it for free with an asterisk because I paid for a subscription.
Correct.
Once that subscription expires, it'll be gone.
Yep.
If they take it off the subscription before I beat it, I have to pay for it, etc.
Right. Okay.
And if I like it enough, I can probably buy it and not feel like I've double dipped because it was a freebie, basically.
Yeah.
For those who do not know, it is basically the best possible combination of Fallout and Borderlands that one could ask for. And the writing is incredible. The conversation trees using different skills to have different dialogue options is great. I've enjoyed exploring. I have enjoyed the combat, sort of. I'm a bit weak, so low level, you sort of take a lot of damage. But I've enjoyed what I've played a lot, and it is the exact sort of game that always runs the risk of a 1 hour session becoming a 2 hour session, or a 2 hour session becoming a, oh my goodness, it's 4 a.m. What happened? And I haven't had that with games in quite a while. So I'll probably skip the details with you because you have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Outer Worlds. I know Jem will be interested, so maybe we'll dive a little deeper into the Outer Worlds next week on Gaming Goals. But Jem has requested that I do give an update on her gaming goals as well. She had a vote on Twitter as to which PS Vita visual novel she would start next. And she has gone with what won in the majority. The running joke was last week we called it Hardo Cookie, but it's actually Hakuuki. And that's not a misstep. That was actually the best I've ever pronounced that game. That's the series. The title is Edo Blossoms. It's feudal Japan with handsome men vying for her affection. It's everything that Jem could possibly want in a video game, I'm sure.
So did Jem do the majority of the voting on that? Or?
Probably. She may have forced the vote. I don't know how many burner Twitter accounts she made to throw fake votes in there. But it won. She has started it. And from what I hear, she is enjoying it. But again, we're going to be a little light on the gaming goals this week. Have you actually been playing anything, the good brother, Mr. Steve?
No, I did actually, after listening a couple of weeks ago to your episode about the Mega Drive Mini. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah, here in Australia.
It is, based on our region.
So, I did actually download a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog on my mobile, thinking, I want to play Sonic the Hedgehog now. And I got through World 1-1 and thought this is way too difficult to play on a mobile. That's that's the last game I think I've played.
I've had Sonic 2, Sonic CD on my phone as well, but I don't like playing them without sticks and buttons. We're trying to touch screen movement and a button when you need precise landings doesn't work very well. But props to you to actually trying, and I do not blame you for getting stuck past the first world because that first Sonic game is actually quite difficult.
Quite clearly, 90s games is my jam. That's like you start talking about an old game like something like Resident Evil, for instance, that we're talking about today. It's like, okay, now I want to play it again.
Yep.
I want to dust off my PlayStation somewhere in the back cupboard, put in a game like Resident Evil 2 and play it. Mind you, I actually still have your Resident Evil 2 remake from this year on PS4.
Which I believe
that
last
I still haven't
time
played.
we had a Gaming Brothers podcast together, you said,
I haven't played it in a while, but...
Well, to be fair, I actually technically have your PS1 and your PS2.
Oh, so then I can't even play the original version.
I'm holding them hostage until you play Resident Evil 2. Then you can play Resident Evil as well. Now, I've also been playing a JRPG on my Vita. I have been making progress in that. Yes.
Yes?
Yes. YS, big Y, little S is the name of the series. Memories of Celceta. It's been pretty good. Again, I'll give more updates on that later. But another game that you might actually be interested in that I did buy a game this week, apart from the free game I got in my subscription.
I'm allowed to buy one when I get one for free.
I bought one with you in mind for getting the benefits of this because I downloaded the Jackbox Party Pack 6
Ah, yes, Jackbox.
A game that I was going to download about a week ago when we were going to hang out together as a big family get-together, and it was released everywhere except for the combination of the PS4 and European/Australian. It got delayed like 4 days. So that wasn't cool. All the other Jackbox games I have on the PS4, at least I would have them all on one console. I didn't want to spread them out. So I finally got it. And I have to say, I quite enjoyed every game on that list.
Couple of new ones in there, or some old favourites tweaked?
We have
improve?
a Trivia Murder Party 2,
Ooh.
and I love a good Trivia Murder Party inside and outside of Jackbox. There's Joke Boat, where you use prompts and Mad Lib style fill in the blanks to make a joke and write the punchline for it. And if you get a hit on that, it is funny as. It's one of those ones that can miss depending on who you're playing with and what sort of combinations they get. Sometimes your hands are tied, you're not going to get a very funny joke. But I found that to be quite good. I like the aesthetics of it too. There's Dictionarium, where you make up a fake description of what a made-up word means,
Yep.
and then you make a synonym for that word. So you basically create the whole thing, and then you use it in a sentence. And we had such things as cruddunny.
Oh.
What do you think a cruddunny would be?
Well, it's I don't know. It sounds like a toilet that you would use for number 2 only.
Well, it's not bad. Ours was the. It started off as one other word, but it sounded very much like something toilet related of a low quality. So someone wrote the synonym of cruddunny. It may have been Jem. She may have had cruddunny on the mind.
Yeah.
But it was a winner. Let's put it that way.
Cruddunny.
And also included is role models, where you have different. If you have your 6 to 8 people that are playing, and you pick a topic, and then you have to allocate who is what out of the field. So one example we had was kitchen utensils. Who is the spatula of the group? Who's the melon baller? Who's the frying pan? And you'll allocate them. Sometimes it's TV shows. Who's in the cast of Friends, I imagine, would be a perfect one for something like this. Who's the Ross? Who's the Monica? Etc., etc. And
I think I would be the Monica. Just because I'm like OCD and very clear. You don't think I would be the Monica?
You're 1,000% a Ross.
No!
You're 100.
No! Okay, we need to stop this discussion. We are going to be doing the podcast now on which Friends character I am.
No, I don't think there's any doubt. I'll ask Jem. She'll say you're a Ross as well. I'm sorry. Look, hey, I don't make the Jackbox games. I've never even seen the fact that Friends was an option.
That's not even a topic.
I'm just saying it was like the most obvious example of how it would work. And we had fun with that. And the most amusing game I think we had was a game called Push the Button. Where if you have played anything like One Night Ultimate Werewolf or Mafia or any sort of game where you have a traitor amidst you trying to sabotage the game and everyone has to figure out who the traitors are, depending on the size of your group, you're on a spaceship and 1 or 2 of you, presumably, are aliens. And you get paired off into separate rooms and you have to do either a writing challenge, a drawing challenge, a strongly agree, strongly disagree, neutral sort of answers. The problem is the humans get one task, topic, question, and the aliens get another one that's slightly different, which means your answers may not line up with you as a person, and then you have to vehemently defend yourself.
Yep.
And try to cast a bit of distraction to someone else. And if you are the alien, you can sabotage and alter somebody's prompt to become the alien prompt, or alter yours to become the human prompt, and enhance your chance of survival. If anyone is suspicious, they can hold and push the button, in which case a vote is cast. If an alien is in the airlock and everyone votes for them and they die, the humans win. And if any one of the humans are in the airlock and die, the aliens win. So it's a whole bunch of psychological trickery and fun and games as the accusations start flying. Some people might be gun-shy about agreeing with the vote because they're not sure enough yet, and so you get standoffs. People then get suspicious of you for delaying the vote, and things go crazy. So Jackbox Party Pack 6, I think, is among the best that I've played. And I've played them all. So I am the expert.
Yeah, well, we remember that you can listen to the episode about the different Jackbox games in the archives.
That's right. Thanks for the plug. Well, that'll do for Gaming Gold right now. We're going to take a short break, gather together our first aid sprays, which take up the same amount of inventory space as like a giant grenade launcher, mind you. And we'll be back after this talking classic Resident Evil games with Brendo and the good brother, Mr. Steve.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at BrendoGem. That's BrendoJem.
I just messaged Mel saying, what Friend's character would you say that I am? So we can go, all right, we have a verification. We've taken a vote. We can do another vote if you wish, if you know me, but I doubt many of the listeners would. So
look, you like paleontology. That's all I'm saying.
Do I?
No. Well, you like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but everyone loves Jurassic Park. Except for our wives.
Jim does not. Yeah. Anyway, back to topic.
I just figured because I don't know, she's OCD and a neat freak, and I figure that I'm more like that. But I guess I'm either Ross or Monica. They're both family, so I'm one or the other.
Well, who am I? This is the real topic of discussion here.
Probably Chandler, because you make a lot of jokes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So if you had said Joey, I'd slap you. Joey is like the Michelangelo of the Ninja Turtles. Now, we have discussed a tiny little bit about the Resident Evil series back when you and I actually did the PlayStation Mini predictions episode that we were miles off because our predictions of what should be on there were so much better than what actually got released.
Yeah, I said Resident Evil 2, and that did not make the cut.
It did not. But Resident Evil, a foundational pillar of our friendship.
Yep.
Back in high school, and also, if you put your mind to it, like we said before, probably one of the first spooky horror-based games that I ever really played. I played action-based games with demons and stuff like Doom and things like that, but nothing of the tension, limited ammunition, limited saves.
And inventory management, having to work out, okay, what do I need now? Am I going to have to put something in an item box? Am I going to have to go pick it up later when I realise, oh, I needed that key now?
Yep. Before we get to specific games, that was one thing that plagued me as an early Resident Evil character, because if I was going exploring in a new part of the building, I wanted all my weapons, 3 full heals, and the key that I needed to get in, and that was my inventory full before I even walked through the door.
Typically you'd have 6 or 8 spots. So you would have, what, four of them taken up with weapons?
Yes. Handgun bullets, shotgun shells.
And then what? How many?
I said 3. I said 3. You never know when you're going to run into a baddie.
I would pretty much have 1 gun with ammunition and probably maximum 2 healing things and allocations for things like a key or a wrench or something that just who knows if I need it now.
All right. Oh my gosh, I've got so many tangents we can go off. When you get weapons in survival horror games, you usually start with something weak like a handgun. Yeah. You might get a shotgun with
but you get plenty
shells.
of ammo.
Yeah. The handgun usually has lots of ammo.
So you might find a shotgun or open it from a locker or something and you have no shells. So I would usually store that away until I built up enough ammunition to use it.
So you use the weaker weapons first?
Well, I would try to avoid fighting where possible.
I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in zombie violence.
Because sometimes you can use 20 bullets on some of these guys. They keep coming at you.
Yeah. I would, primarily, playing a Resident Evil style game, I would have the shotgun as my main weapon. Because if anything gets too close to me, bam, it's dead.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I know there's no enemies going to be next to me, I'll switch to the handgun. And with the Magnum, I'll just never use it.
Yeah, well, you never have enough bullets, do you?
You never know when you're going to need a good Magnum. Resident Evil 1.
Yep.
My first Resident Evil game, I believe.
Not mine, though. I reckon I played this probably the 3rd.
Out of the first 3?
Of the first 3.
See, I went 1, 3, 2.
I would have went 2, 3, 1. Which is weird because, I mean, I didn't own the first one.
Clearly, not a Monica. She would have not done them out of order.
I borrowed the first one from you I guess a couple of years after I'd played the second one.
Yowie wowie.
So,
because I started off with a copy on the PC.
Yeah.
Which I may have bought non-legally from Brad Prue.
I
Just name dropping him out there.
don't think you can say that.
He's going to go to jail now. And my version on the PC had no cutscenes.
Oh.
Had like the actual full motion video ones were
yep.
not there because it wasn't running on a disc technically. And my computer must have been a little too fast for it.
Too
rare
fast.
for the technology I grew up with. That must be rare. But the animations would run so fast that during the conversations, they'd get out of sync with the hand animations that people are flapping around because someone would speak too slowly and then the things would speed up and everything was running out of whack. So, Resident Evil 1, what comes to mind instantly when you think Resident Evil 1 original?
Bad voice acting. By far, the funniest thing about playing that game is listening to the bad voice acting. We constantly will say things like, I hope this isn't Chris's blood.
We have a friend called Chris.
He bleeds a lot. He's got a disease. We probably shouldn't. No, we don't. We don't.
He has a disease.
We will often make comments from that game.
Jill sandwich is
Jill
always
sandwich,
on the menu.
What is it? How many times do they say, what is it?
Barry Burton, big bustling Barry Burton is always saying, what is this? What is it? It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things. Resident Evil 1, we have the STARS members into the mansion, the famous Spencer Mansion, and you have to explore, find out what happened to the Bravo team, survive, find your way out, and uncover the truth of what mysterious corporation is behind all of this. I'll give you a clue. It's Umbrella. I'm sure that's not a spoiler at this point. Now,
Lots of twists and turns with the storyline as well. Sometimes you might think, oh, I think I got this all figured out, and then boom, plot twist. Something happens. Okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, this is like the defining series, I think, as far as my preferences, even as far as like today with gaming, in that, like we said, inventory management, puzzles.
Yep. I was a big fan of that at the time.
Strangely, I like games that give you limited saves. Is that weird?
I mean, we grew up in a generation that the early games you couldn't save. You pretty much had to play, and if you wanted to finish it, you had to make sure you had a good couple of hours to sit down and finish it. So I guess we grew up used to not being able to save. That being said, I would always hate to lose all of my lives or die or whatever at a point and go, oh, I haven't saved in ages. I have to do that all again. So I probably differ from you that the fact that if I could find a bit of ink ribbon, I'm going to use it. I'm going to save regularly because you never know, especially when you get to, say, 2 and 3, when you got someone, well, I guess even the first one, you got someone chasing you. Mm-hmm. You don't want to just walk into a room, you're like me, and you've only got the handgun.
Well, that's your fault.
Maybe I've just used a green herb and I've got no health and somebody comes in and I've got nothing to defend myself with and I die. I don't want to have to go back and do all of those things again. So I'm probably more likely to save more often than you, but I guess you like the thrill.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I really like Resident Evil 1. I really like Resident Evil 1. If you try to ask me what my favorite classic Resident Evil game is, that's like my brain melting. I become like Cheaty from The Good Place. It's so hard for me to decide.
Can't decide, yeah.
There is so much nostalgia in every single one of these classic games, even the bad ones, even the spin-offs. But the actual main ones we're talking about today, I find it very difficult to decide.
So that was the first one you played?
The first one. I had probably read a walkthrough before I had the game, and that's what sort of sold me on it. Mm-hmm. Reading that there's puzzles and, special keys and weapons and hunters that appear at a certain point in the game, and you get out of the mansion, you go to another little place, there's a plant monster, there's all sorts of this weird stuff. It sold me just based on the screenshots and the walkthrough that I read. There's a whole bunch of games of that era that sold me on buying them with walkthroughs. Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VIII. My entry points in 3 big series, all from walkthroughs. Now, you mentioned the voice acting before, which is notoriously bad. There's no excuses for voice acting of this caliber. Unless there is. And I did a little digging in this because I thought, surely, if you look at the games like Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid, which came out, 2 years apart or something like that? Mm-hmm. That's a big difference in voice acting quality between those two titles. So how can a game like Resident Evil have such bad voice acting? Well, unconfirmed, but in my research today, as I dug into this topic, the game's voice director, don't always blame the talent. Sometimes it's the director. Sometimes it's deliberately bad, like Final Fantasy X with its famous laugh, which is supposed to be bad. I will defend that to the grave and then come back as a zombie and defend it still.
And then, Barry Burton will shoot you because you are a living thing.
By the way, it takes Barry Burton 3 shots of his .44 caliber Magnum to drop the first zombie he sees. I don't know what he's aiming for, but he is a bad shot. The voice acting, the voice direction of the classic Resident Evil original PlayStation 1, supposedly the voice director was Japanese. Mm-hmm. And he understood English, but he was translating the direction from the Japanese script and the Japanese performances and wanted the emphasis on the same words.
Oh.
Even if in the different language we don't emphasize the same words as they do in the Japanese script. Right. Which is why so many of the lines are so jilted and weirdly paced, and it admittedly doesn't help that the CD is trying to read each audio file. So there is that awkward 4-second pause between when a character speaks and the next character picks up the dialogue. But that may be a slight reason as to why.
That could be possible. That could also be them trying to make up an excuse for after we go. No, it wasn't our fault. That's how you asked it to be done like this.
Don't open that door. I could play so many clips from the classic Resident Evil bad voice acting. Before we move on from Resident Evil 1, I will always remember the stupid shotgun puzzle where it is sitting on a rack, and if you take it off, the little hooks click upwards, and you think...
weight, lack of weight. Yep.
And you think, what was that all about? Unless you read a walkthrough about the game before you played it. Now, if you play as Jill, Barry comes to the rescue, and all's good. You're not a Jill sandwich. If you play as Chris, nobody's coming to save you unless you substitute that shotgun for something else. Resident Evil 7, minor spoilers, there's something very similar when it comes to the shotgun for that. And I was far too afraid to even attempt to lift that off its pedestal, just in case they had more severe consequences than the old roof starting to come down unless you put it back on. So I was so afraid to go near that thing that I was stuck almost at a boss fight.
Without a shotgun.
Without a shotgun when I could have had one. And it's my own stupid fault for not trying to...
Well, that's all right. I would have grabbed it off the wall and then put it straight into an item box. So, wouldn't have had it either.
There we go. Quick little query. Which of these playthroughs, because you can play as Jill Valentine or you can play as Chris Redfield, which of those playthroughs is canon? Do you know?
Ooh, I'm going to guess and say Jill, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, you would be.
I'd be 50%.
Because technically, neither is canon, but they are both canon.
You tricked me. You trick-or-treated me.
If you play as Chris, Jill and the Bravo team member Rebecca Chambers, who acts like she's about 8 years old based off the voice acting we heard.
Sounds like she's 8, yeah.
They survive. And if you play as Jill, Chris and Barry Burton survive. There's no possible way to have everybody survive, but somehow, according to canon, everybody survives. So there you go. There's no technical canon ending for Resident Evil 1. There you go. Fun fact.
Are we going to touch on the novels that you had at all?
Go right ahead.
You've got novels of the Resident Evil series. I think at least the first 4. As in being Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil Code Veronica.
There's also a 0.
There's more than that.
There is also a 0, which we won't
has
talk about
Rebecca
today.
Chambers in it, doesn't
Yes.
it? Yep.
That's not on the menu for today, unfortunately. But there's also 2 sort of fill-in-the-blanks novels that are just made-up events just for the novels.
Yeah.
I bought these at some random bookstore on the other side of the country on a holiday and didn't know they existed before I stumbled across them. Bought the whole set, read like a book a day, and I loved them. And they're terrible, and they have extra characters thrown in there to sort of push the plot along.
A bit of leeway there with the author being able to just fill in some of their own blanks, a bit of license there to put some extra characters and a bit of storyline to it.
Yeah, it also helps when they're just like, oh, we couldn't do this entire section of the game because it's going to take too long to write it. So they just sort of broke the lock on this door and they got in somewhere they shouldn't have. Things like that.
Yeah,
but
no one wants to read about, and the character backtracked halfway through the mansion to go and open this door.
And then they forgot to bring the key with them, so they had to go back to the item box. No.
But in that particular one, they all survive.
Yes.
From memory.
Yes.
So that was what I considered to be, I guess.
So forget the
canon,
actual
if you like.
game. The bad novelization from S.D. Perry is the official canon.
Well, I just figure in future games, like in Resident Evil 3, at least one of the endings you can get is Barry in the helicopter.
Yeah.
So
He has to be
therefore,
there.
he has to be alive.
Yeah.
But then we know that Jill survives. We know Chris survives. And I guess Rebecca, did she follow up in any further game?
Not after the fact.
Yeah. So I guess maybe she could
No, but
not survive.
she's still alive.
She's still alive.
She's still
just not in
referenced.
the game.
Yeah, that's correct. Resident Evil 1, PlayStation 1, original release, has an average review score on GameRankings.com of 87.23%. Not bad.
That's pretty high considering it was the first one that came out. It was 96 from memory when it came out. They had some improvements that they could make with future technology as well. So they did pretty well.
But a good debut.
Oh, very good debut.
And we move on to Resident Evil 2, a game that if I had to pick a favourite child out of the original trilogy, Resident Evil 2 probably gets the nod. No, I can't even commit to that. 3 and 1 are also so good. I don't know. Well, I shouldn't have even brought that up.
You shouldn't have favourites in children. Favourite children. But, and I don't. I have 2 now, so I can't have a favourite. For me, number 2 is my favourite of the Resi games.
Yep.
I've mentioned before on that previous episode where we talked about the games we wanted to see released on the PlayStation Mini. That we talked about that I went from playing Super Nintendo, where games were quite childish, Mario Kart, things like that. And I went to playing Resident Evil 2 as like one of my first games on the PlayStation. And that was just a complete overload of the environment that you're in is... You feel like you have to grow up. You're in a place that's dark, there's fire, there's zombies, the whole town is just ruined. And it's time that you've got to literally survive. There's dogs after you. There is a tyrant after you. And for me, this game just opened my eyes up to what the PlayStation could do.
2 discs, 2
Two
campaigns.
discs.
Leon and Claire, you play as either of them escaping Raccoon City. After all, the whole city, as you said, has gone into the fiery depths of Zombieville.
By the way, I did speak on that episode once that I believe on my birthday, 24th of July, is when the outbreak happened. I was wrong.
You were
believe Resident Evil 1
Yes.
in the mansion
Yes.
is set July 24th,
Yes, it is.
1998.
No,
So I just wanted to clarify that
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I knew that there was something that happened on my birthday. So it wasn't when the outbreak happened into the city in Resident Evil 2. That happened a couple of months later. But I just wanted to get that in.
No, I'm glad you confessed that you were wrong.
Because you were going to bring it up?
Nah, well, maybe. I'm pretty sure I was 100% sure last time that I was right.
I wondered, because you went, was it?
Well, I know that Resident Evil 3 and 2 take place at the same time.
Yeah.
And Jill says September 28th.
Yes.
During
at
her
the start of
diary
Resident
entry.
3.
So that was never in
Yeah.
doubt. In my mind, it was never in doubt.
Well, you could have said, wasn't it the mansion, you mean? Don't you mean that?
Anyway, depending on who you play as first with Resident Evil 2, you can then do the alternate scenario from the other side of the original car crash and experience the same major areas, but with different puzzles, different keys, different enemies.
Different side character.
Yes, exactly right. And it is different. The entire situation is different depending on which one you do first. This one does actually have a canon
Correct.
playthrough. And which order is that? Do you remember?
Claire A. So he plays Claire first, and then Leon B.
That is correct, which is not the order of the discs.
No.
Which are explicitly labelled 1 and 2. Yes. And if you play them disc 1 first, you're doing it wrong.
You're playing as Leon.
That's the first puzzle you have to overcome in Resident Evil 2. Now, one of the big things they had in this was what was called the zapping system, which doesn't make any sense. That must be a mistranslation from Japan. But if you are a greedy guts when you play through your A scenario and you take...
all the bullets you can find.
Yep,
all the herbs.
There's certain lockers that will open up and there'll be special items in there. You can take them all. You can take half of them. You can take none of them. You might take the one for the extra storage space and then take the submachine gun that's in there as well. And then when you do the B grade scenario, the
Bravo team.
If you do the B scenario, you are without any special items when you get to that same locker. It also affects if you use replace fuses in shutters and block zombies from getting into places. There'll be a safe corridor later on when you do the B scenario. Things like this. It was innovative at the time, pretty clever, and I quite enjoyed it. Now, the fun little facts that we find out while doing research for these things, which is part of the reason I really enjoy doing this podcast, is because it forces me to do more research on things I think I already know a lot about. Annette Birkin, wife of giant blob stash genius William Birkin.
Yep. Creator of the G virus.
That's right. She. Annette Birkin was modelled after which Hollywood actress?
Oh, well, she was blonde. And that's all I've got.
That doesn't really help.
To go by because
she's a pixelated
PlayStation characters weren't exactly modelled like they are now. I don't know. I don't even know what era to even think of.
Well, it's 90s, obviously.
Yeah, but I don't know if she was modelled after someone that was from
She
the
was
70s.
in the 90s.
Oh. No, I got no idea.
Jodie Foster.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
Hello, Clarice.
And as a counterpoint, Leon S. Kennedy, based on...
Keanu Reeves?
It's not a bad choice, but it's actually artist Isao Ohishi's dog. His bloodhound was the inspiration for Leon's appearance. So
I thought you meant like a Hollywood character.
May have set you up there. And also, Resident Evil 2, another little fun trivia fact I found out about this is that it appeared as a main plot point, the game itself, in the British sitcom Spaced, written by Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg? Mm-hmm. Was he in Shaun of the Dead?
He was in Shaun of the Dead and directed by Edgar Wright, this little sitcom. The character Tim, played by Simon Pegg, under the influence of drugs and the video game Resident Evil 2, hallucinates that he's fighting off a zombie invasion. What could that have possibly gone on to influence Shaun of the Dead?
So there you go. Resident Evil in the 90s, just sparking up a new love of zombies and movies that followed. Yep. Well, movies, TV shows, games.
Confirmed by the director himself that was their influence for Shaun of the Dead. So without Resident Evil, we wouldn't have any of this fun stuff in life.
Under the influence of green herb.
Under the influence of, something, that's for sure. How do the herbs actually heal you in Resident Evil? That's the big question.
Well, traditionally, there are herbs that grow that do have medicinal properties, but you don't eat them. You'd have to crush them up and rub them on your skin, wouldn't you?
What if you had a reaction? What if you'd done it with a cactus instead? That's not wise. Resident Evil 2, average review score?
91.
Higher. 93.13 original PlayStation launch. Not launch.
It was a top game. It was a great game. It made me want to play the third one because I played this in late 98, early 99, and I knew that there was another one coming out probably the end of 99, start of 2000. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, a bit of Dino Crisis came out between, which allowed me to play that in between. But we'll get to Resident Evil 3.
Resident Evil 3 is next, and I fell in love with Nemesis the first time I saw his stapled face with his big exposed gums and massive teeth. Oh, that's love at gaming first sight.
Oh, he was an intimidating force, wasn't he? 8 foot tall, approximately.
Look, you're playing a game that has a game series that has zombies, giant hunter creatures, lickers, all this scary stuff, and they go, no, that's not bad. That's not good
nothing.
enough. We want
You can run from them and shut the door behind you.
We want a sentient, intelligent, 8-foot-tall beast with a rocket launcher and giant tentacle arm.
With a taste for Star's blood.
Stars. Now, the original pitch for Resident Evil 3 was very different to what we got. Resident Evil 3, the actual game, reused some locations from Resident Evil 2. It's set in the same time frame. You get a bit more of the city, but you still revisit places like the RPD.
Yep. Bit of nostalgia there.
Yeah, so same time frame, same setting. The original pitch for it, though, however, scenario writer Yasuhisa Kawamura originally intended the game to be loosely set on a luxury cruise liner and had the general plot where Hunk, the umbrella agent, was attempting to bring back a sample of the G-Virus, which was featured in Resident Evil 2. He went into the sewers to William Birkin's lab, got the G-Virus sample, and then booked a cruise ship.
Well, yes. I've earned this.
Now, what we got...
So it was meant to be like a spin-off type thing, in a way. Not a direct sequel.
The fun thing is, again, discovering new things while doing the research for this. Code Veronica was originally designed to be Resident Evil 3, the direct sequel to 2, starring Claire Redfield. It makes sense. But
there was delays, wasn't there?
It wasn't going to be ready in time. It was coming out on a different system, the Dreamcast. It was graphically more powerful, but it meant more complex graphical work for them to work with. So they wanted something in the meantime, and they were going to make Resident Evil Nemesis with just another random character thrown in, but they realized that if we're going to sell this, we should probably have a recurring character. And because Code Veronica had already started development, Chris and Claire were already reserved for that. So the only real character left would have been Leon or Jill. Out of the returning protagonists. And Jill got the nod because who didn't enjoy seeing her run around Raccoon City in completely not helpful clothing choices? I think a boob tube and a miniskirt, not the most...
Oh, that's why she needed to find that pack that she puts on to give her extra storage capacity.
Good stuff. The Nemesis does pursue you through this game. He is a boss character, basically, that will just show up and ruin your day. Jumping through a window, or every time you go into a new area, you will hear a certain bit of music that means that he is nearby. And he may burst through a door. He may burst through a window, or a wall, or anything. And suddenly there he is to ruin your day.
Your heart rate was guaranteed to increase when he was in the picture.
It didn't matter if you destroyed him. He would be back.
Would come back.
It doesn't matter if you evade him. He will be back. And did you know who Nemesis was inspired by? Big Nemi himself. And it makes perfect sense.
Were they a Hollywood actor from the 90s?
Yes, I can say yes.
Oh.
But technically it was a fictional character played by an actor in the 90s.
Okay.
Shinji Mikami
Predator?
said... Oh, no, not quite. As soon as I say it, you'll say I can see exactly where they're coming from. Shinji Mikami, the producer of Resident Evil Classic. I wanted to introduce a new kind of fear into the game, a persistent feeling of paranoia, and the Nemesis brings that on in spades. When it disappears after the first confrontation, you live in constant dread of the next attack. The idea is to make you feel like you're being stalked. Now, if I had said that, Predator's not a bad guess, but it was based off liquid metal. T-1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
So I had Arnie. I got the correlation.
There was a link. Robert Patrick himself, who my good buddy the Falcon thought the guy in Man of Medan.
You still haven't
I
worked that out?
don't know what it is. But he said he looked a bit like him. So he's still around, potentially.
Just a side note. T-1000 is a really cool... Let's call him a nemesis.
Antagonist.
Okay.
Yeah, he is a nemesis
awesome
in that game.
Bad guy, if you will.
Constantly pursues them. Relentless. Will do anything. Unstoppable. It's Nemesis in molten metal form.
But I'll be honest, the first time, or maybe not the first time, because I reckon I saw it, and then there was another time again where I watched it and I'd kind of forgotten about it. I was a little bit older. When you see him as he's the antagonist, you kind of look at him and go, oh, Arnie's got him covered.
Yeah.
He's a skinny guy. He's not
pointy ears.
Look at Arnie. But
more than a match.
Yeah, it wasn't just so much what his size was, it was just the fact that he continued to pursue. There was no stopping him.
No stopping
Which is
him.
much like Nemesis.
Now, stupid me tried to beat Nemesis with a knife. And it was not successful after many, many retries.
You had worked out that you only needed to attack him or fight him, confront him in an actual combat twice. But on one of them, you could just not beat him. It was just too hard.
Every other boss in Resident Evil 3 has a chump way of beating them, where they're using the environment, a timer, acid, hoses, lots of different options, except for one fight at the stupid clock tower. And I was going for a knife-only run back in the days before achievements or trophies, so it was really just to do it for fun.
That was just arrogance.
That was my idea of a fun Saturday afternoon, struggling to reload my save time and time again.
On what difficulty did you do it on the normal? It wasn't hard, was it?
I honestly don't know. Probably normal.
Yeah,
I would say normal.
Yeah, that would have just been insane.
I'd already beaten it 8 times in a row on hard to unlock the epilogues.
Yes.
Now, Resident Evil 1 has been remade.
Yep.
Resident Evil 2 recently has been remade. And Capcom producer Yoshiaki Hirabayashi has said that Resident Evil 3 may be remade if fans are vocal enough.
Oh.
Would you be down for more Nemesis?
I definitely would. Now, number 2, I believe, has been very well received, the remake of number 2 this year.
Review scores, sales, fan reactions. I think it is a contender for Game of the Year 2019.
Based on that, surely there is a need for a 21st century edition of the Nemesis.
I'd be down for it. The scariness of... I mean, Resident Evil 2 had like the prototype to the Nemesis, gameplay-wise, with Mr. X, who would follow you around a little bit. He wasn't that bad in the PlayStation version. In the remake, however, good golly, you wear surround sound headphones with that bad boy chasing you. That is horror. Now imagine you give him a rocket launcher and an insta-kill with a tentacle hand, and you too could enjoy 21st century Nemesis.
And much like Brad Vickers, our phase 2 may be decimated.
Yes, poor Brad Vickers does not have a good run in Resident Evil 3.
Do you think that was them getting him back for... Well, not
for abandoning him?
Not them getting him back, but, like, well, he abandoned the rest of the team. It's kind of like, yeah, he's fodder. He's just there to be...
I still know most of the names of the Alpha and Bravo teams from the Stars. And Brad Vickers was one I actually couldn't remember today when I was trying to recall.
Really?
I couldn't remember his last name for so long. I finally got it, but I used to love Brad Vickers, watching him get brain spiked. Resident Evil 3, average review score, PlayStation original copy.
Okay, I would say it's somewhere between the two. So, 87 was number 1.
It's between the two?
93 was for Resident Evil 2. So, I would say this is probably 89.
You're good with your statistics. 88.21% average review score. That's pretty good.
I would probably agree with that. And I was really excited about number 3 coming out. And I really liked it at the time. But there was one thing that maybe disappointed me a little bit with that game. Was I was hoping it was going to be longer.
One disc after the 2-disc Resident Evil.
And,
so it's a common complaint.
Knowing that it had... I mean, I know that Resident Evil 2, it was 2 discs. But one was the Leon, one was the Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And you could alternate and play back and forth once you finished one. But Metal Gear Solid had 2 discs, and I'd played that year, in 99. So when this was coming out, I just thought, man, if it was 2 discs, that would be awesome. I got it, opened it up, it was 1 disc. I thought, well, maybe it'll still be long. Maybe not as long as 2 discs could be, but I just felt that was my one complaint, that it was just short.
Well,
shorter than I would have liked.
To argue that point, because when I played through it 8 times to get all the epilogues, I could beat it in 1 hour and 40. So
Yeah. Well, I only ended up doing it 4 times and then just got you to do the others and just copied or borrowed your memory card so I could see what the other epilogues were.
Yeah, it does make sense from a development standpoint that it was just like a spin-off originally by design, and then they went, well, let's just put the number 3 on it, and this can be the 3rd one.
Yeah.
And we'll make Code Veronica just its own thing, I guess. I don't know. I'm not in charge of Capcom in the 90s. But what it did have, Resident Evil 3, was a bit of replayability, because you had action prompts where you had to make a choice.
Yep.
And that was the first time that had been put into a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, I think it was introduced perhaps in Dino Crisis, as far as the Capcom survival horror games went.
Yep, very similar. You would have an action sequence. The Nemesis shows up, puts a spike through Brad Vicker's head. You can either fight or run into the police station. It gives you the dialogue options, basically, to do that. I've always loved choose your own adventure business. I have loved any sort of branching narrative like that from the days of Resident Evil 3, where you have to choose whether to run away from Nemesis or jump off the bridge or whatever your choices are, all the way through to like David Cage games and Man of Medan, Man of Medan, Man of Medan.
I was just thinking of Detroit, where you've got at the end of a part and it will show you the different branches that could have went, and you're like, I've done one out of a potential 20 different branches. Obviously it wasn't quite that complex back with Resident Evil 3, but yes, there was choices that would affect then your ending, potentially.
The ones towards the later part of the game would affect the ending. The ones earlier on, sometimes
just
an illusion of choice as well. They're not really affecting much. But still, it is its own little gimmick for Resident Evil 3. And then came along the ill-fated Sega Dreamcast that Capcom put all their eggs into that basket and released Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Sega Dreamcast, expecting big sales. They did not get their big sales. I hate to say it.
I think it would have had more sales, the actual game, if it had been on the PlayStation. But because it was on a new console and a console that was not overly popular, I think that affected the sales. I think it's actually a good game.
Sega's mistake was to release it mid-lifespan of the existing consoles. So your PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, the next one was the Sega Dreamcast. A few years later, it was well and truly more graphically powerful, and it was an excellent console, but it was expensive, and not many people had the money to buy it after shelling out the hardware costs a few years earlier. And then came along, when everybody had replenished their wallets, the PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, the Nintendo GameCube not far behind, and so the poor Dreamcast just shriveled up and died. Their original sales expectations were not met, let's just put it that way, and so Code Veronica did get a re-release as Code Veronica Complete, or X, on the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo GameCube, and then the sales picked up a bit. But I have always loved my Dreamcast. I have always loved Resident Evil Code Veronica. I think it is the best of the first 4 mainline games, gameplay-wise. I can't say it's my favourite, because I've already established that's impossible.
See, and if I hadn't have borrowed your Dreamcast and the game to play it, I would have probably never have played the game. Because until that came out on the PlayStation 2, of which case I didn't have a PlayStation 2 until much later, so I probably never would have even played this if I hadn't borrowed your Dreamcast. So I at least thank you for that, for you having the Dreamcast.
Now, what do you think of when you think Code Veronica? What comes to mind? What's the first thing?
To be honest with you, what comes to mind is weird Alfred Ashford and his changing of clothing to dress like his sister, who was presumed dead, I suppose, but was actually just kind of in some sort of lab.
Yeah, you had Alfred and Alexia Ashford, the twins, which do interact with you throughout the game, but it turns out that one of them's not alive, and so it's actually just the same guy in drag.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that Alexia is technically alive because she injected herself with the virus, the T. Veronica virus, and put herself into a suspended state of animation so that she could progressively transform and maintain control of her sanity while having superpowers, basically. Didn't go as well as she thought because we killed her, but you know how it goes with these things. If you're a bad guy and you're injecting stuff into you, you're probably not going to survive the rest of the game.
So I played Resident Evil 2 first and then the third one. And then later, from you, I borrowed the first one and then played Code Veronica. So I kind of grouped this and number 1 together for me because you had Chris Redfield in it and you also had Albert Wesker in it.
I loved Wesker. I loved everything about Wesker. Again,
I hated him.
He's a bad guy who wears sunglasses all the time, and it's just because he wants to be cool.
Yeah.
And he's the one wearing black out of all of the original Stars members. So the hints are there. Let's put it that way. He betrays you, gets killed, presumably, and then his body's gone. His body's missing. Where did his body go? Must have been eaten by the tyrant. I don't know. And then he's back in Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Is he modified at this point?
He is.
Yeah.
He got sliced by Tyrant and injected himself with
The
a special,
T-virus?
a magic special virus that gave him lizard eyes. And there he is, alive again with powers. And
But still evil.
yeah, the follow-up of Albert Wesker returning and causing trouble and having little remote control sentry bots that if you trip their little sensor field, a hunter comes to try to kill you. That's cool, but scary stuff. And I used to dig it.
Do you know what I find interesting?
What's that?
In Resident Evil 2, Leon, when you're playing as him, you have Ada Wong as kind of like your side character that you kind of interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Does she not, at one point, profess her love for Leon? I'm sure. there's
Probably
something
as
like
she's
that.
falling to her
As she's
death.
about to die or something. They've just met. They barely see each other over that.
Hey,
But
look, if you go through a zombie outbreak in Raccoon City, that's where the juices get flowing. Okay, I'm not talking about the G-virus juices either that William Birkin has dripping off of him.
And then in Code Veronica, you have, I can't remember his last name, but there's a Steve. I remember the character Steve because that's my name.
Steve
Burnside?
Burnside, not
Yep.
the good brother. He is a little dweeb.
Him and Claire,
Yep.
you spend a bit of time together. And does he not profess
He
his
does.
love for her too?
Look,
So if
every story needs heart and romance, even if it's ham-fisted in unnecessarily.
So, yeah, like you said, in a zombie outbreak, there's your chance for love.
So if you haven't found love yet, you know what to do. Now, what's funny is not only did the sales not live up to what they expected off the Dreamcast, thanks Sega, the whole reason this game even got made was because they unsuccessfully attempted to port Resident Evil 2 to the Sega Saturn and couldn't do it. So then the new consoles coming out, they're like, stuff it, let's just make a game
Go
for
straight
that.
to that.
And then that didn't perform as well either. So double the fun from Sega.
Poor Code Veronica.
Mm.
It had so much potential.
It was released
yet-
to critical acclaim.
It was a good game.
It's frequently said it's the best entry in classic Resident Evil. At the time, people say it's undisputed the best one. It had 3D environments instead of pre-rendered graphics for the backdrops, which meant you could have moving cameras, you could have zooming cameras, all this new amazing technology. You had a controller that had a miniature screen on the memory card where you could simply look down and see your health
Yeah, that was
at
pretty cool.
any given time. That is cool. I loved my Dreamcast. I loved Code Veronica. And if you were not one of the few who had a Dreamcast and you got Code Veronica X, you got a whopping 10 minutes of extra content as far as Wesker's antics and what Umbrella have been up to. So I'm sure I've played Code Veronica X, but I have no idea what I've played it on. I don't know if I borrowed it from somebody. I don't know if I have it on PS2.
And it's hidden somewhere.
I don't know what I'm sure I've played it because I know I've seen the scenes, and they're not the sort of scenes that I like to watch on YouTube. I'm sure I've played it,
Okay.
and I'm confused as to how.
It's just missing.
It is. It might be at my dad's place. I don't know. Review score. Code Veronica.
Ooh. Okay. Well, you said critical acclaim. Critic acclaim. No, critical acclaim. That's right, isn't it? Critical acclaim? Or critic acclaim?
This shouldn't be that hard. It's critical acclaim.
I'm going to say it's probably, it's high 80s, 88.
88.
No?
It's 93.79 for the original Dreamcast
Okay.
release. The
That's
highest rated so far of the Resident Evil games. And since we're going to be talking about the spin-offs after the break, it's probably not going to be contested.
Downhill from there.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
Now, we've talked already, just like a certain hedgehog of mine, his glory days were in the early stages of his gameplay releases. Resident Evil did dip significantly after the launches of the first 3 games and Code Veronica. What series would be complete without a few cash grabs, a few spin-offs that don't live up to expectations? If you're after them, we've got them. Let's put it that way. Can we start with Resident Evil Gaiden?
We can, but I won't be able to say much because I didn't even know this existed until earlier today.
We had a discussion where we were bringing up some of the side games we'd be talking about. You had never even heard of Resident Evil Gaiden. You didn't even know what the word Gaiden meant.
No.
But you knew it was
Telegram. Telegram.
We looked up the actual translation of Gaiden, which is used in games like Ninja Gaiden and Resident Evil Gaiden. And it can mean telegram or it can mean side story. We'll leave it up to you to decide which one they were intending on using. Look, stop me if you've heard this pitch before, though. This was a Game Boy Color game, and it depicts a viral outbreak on a luxurious passenger ship.
Oh, cruise ship time.
Now, this is the second time they've pitched.
They had something about cruise ships. I guess when you're on a cruise ship, you're in the middle of the ocean. There's no escape.
There's zero.
And you're confined to a space that has potentially a lot of people turn into zombies.
It makes more sense than a police station that has strange unicorn metal puzzles.
Yes.
And a kooky mansion, which admittedly at least is explained in storyline with
underground lab and stuff, yeah.
And the architect went crazy trying to protect it and so on and so forth. That one makes sense. A cruise ship, though, as you said, lots of population, no escape, multi-layered environment.
Yeah, plenty of rooms, yeah.
In this game, you play as Leon Kennedy. Sorry, Leon S. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Leave the S out. Or Barry Burton himself. Good old Barreled Burton.
Barreled.
Now, this game is not good. It's a Game Boy Color game to start with, so technologically it doesn't have much to work with.
Very limited, yeah.
It literally looks like, top-down view, the old-school, pre-solid Metal Gear games.
Yes.
And you're moving around an environment with that sort of viewpoint. It's not as scary as, blind corners in a mansion or in a police station or in a hospital.
Yeah, those different camera angles that can really make you focus on something that is completely not where something's going to jump out at you.
Yeah. So it loses points there. If you touch an enemy, you got attacked by an enemy, it goes to first person. It shows as a creature attacking you, and you have to time the little bouncing meter to hit it. It's really not very good gameplay-wise, to the point where its average review score is at 56.
I was going to say, if it hits 60, I'd be surprised.
56.64, which, to be fair, is almost double what WWE 2K20 is trending at the moment. It is not faring very well. Barreled Burton is there again. Good old Barry. Not the last time he stars in a Resident Evil game, though.
Stars.
He will be back in a more modern game, Resident Evil Revelations 2. Huh. Barry Burton. He hasn't hung up the stars badge and the funky maroonish vest yet. So good for him. Now, Resident Evil was born and bred on the original PlayStation, and we have to have at least one spin-off on the PlayStation. I'm sure it was contractually obligated. As soon as the first game was released and money was made, make a direct sequel, but let's see how else we can make money too. And I certainly did play a fair bit of a game called Resident Evil Survivor.
Yeah. Now, this was using the gun technology that they had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
What was it called again? You'd know this.
The Namco G-Con 45.
Yep.
The light gun of all light guns. Forget your Nintendo Zapper. Forget the Master System Sega Light Phaser. This was the best light gun around.
Now, you could play it with that gun, or you could also play it with your handheld control if you did not have the gun, correct?
Yes.
I've played this game without the G-Con 45.
Have you never played Survivor with the G-Con?
No.
Did you have a G-Con?
No. which is why I didn't play it with the G-Con.
Probably should have led with that question. I loved the G-Con 45. I loved arcade machines that had like Time Crisis and Point Blank.
Yes.
And those games had their releases on the PlayStation with the G-Con.
Yeah. Well, and you had to bring out more games. If you're going to buy the gun, you're going to have quite a few games that you can play with it. So Point Blank was really good.
Yeah, props to Point Blank because that was my gateway to getting it because I just made my mum play that at the arcades once and then I go, oh, you can play it at home.
If we buy this.
Suddenly we had all the Point Blank games and Resident Evil Survivor, which sadly is not set on an island with immunity idols and voting out. It's a very different game.
Not on a cruise ship either.
This game was released in the year 2000 and had a Windows PC version, which was only released in China and Taiwan in 2002.
Okay.
An interesting one. First-person light gun game, but not on rails. One of the very first off-rails light gun shooters. And that works about as well as you expect. Because the whole point of a light gun game on rails is that you can shoot and then the game will move for you and you go to a new section and then you shoot enemies and then you go to a new section. When you're in control of a 3D environment trying to control it with a freaking gun, it's not going to work very well. You had to shoot off the screen to start moving and use the buttons on either side of the gun to turn. It's slow, it's cumbersome.
Very clunky.
It's not what you want when you're being attacked by zombies in a first-person shooting game. Now, interestingly enough, this game was released in Japanese, European, and America territories.
Yep.
The American had no capability to use a light gun.
Oh.
Because of recent links to shooting games being partly blamed for high school massacres. There was no possibility to even play with a light gun. So depending on the region of which you played Resident Evil Survivor, you may not have even been playing it the way it's supposed to be played. That's an interesting little factoid.
So I effectively was playing it like what they would have had to do in North America.
And moving is much easier using the controller.
Definitely.
But then aiming, you're actually trying to steer the crosshair and shoot and then move. And
much
then
slower.
Put the crosshair back on and try to steer it again where you want to go. Not the most helpful thing. Resident Evil Survivor, average review score.
70?
41.9.
Now, it obviously did well enough because there was a second Survivor game.
There was more than a second, my friend. There were 4 in total of the Gun Survivor series. Resident Evil Gun Survivor 2, Code Veronica.
Which is the one I'm thinking of.
Was on the PlayStation 2. Basically, retold Code Veronica as a first-person, off-rails light gun shooter. Gameplay almost exactly the same. Different guns, different graphics, a new generation up, bit better. No voice acting, however. It was missing from that title, and you had subtitled text only. And if you spent too long in any area in Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica, the Nemesis shows up to kill you. Who was not actually in Code Veronica. So it's a little bit different, a little bit changed, but there's not too much to talk about that one. Average review score for that, 52.5. We're seeing a trend with these spin-offs. They are not delivering anywhere near as much as the original series. Now, Gun Survivor 3 was technically not a Resident Evil game. It was a Dino Crisis spin-off called Dino Stalker, and I had it. It was pretty bad.
Well, we all know what happened to Dino Crisis after the first one. So, it doesn't surprise me that this was bad.
Dino Crisis, I've never seen a series take a sharper dive off a cliff after a successful first outing than Dino Crisis. But the spin-off was there. If you wanted time-traveling dinosaurs and free energy and a bit of space travel and stuff, Dino Crisis is for you. But Dino Stalker was basically an arcade light gun in your own home with dinosaurs. But after that, my friend, the 4th Gun Survivor game, called Resident Evil Dead Aim, which had a pretty cool cover for our territory. But the cover in the American territories was abysmal. It is terrible. It is ugly. It is hideous. But with this game on the PlayStation 2, you use the light gun to shoot, but you could have a controller plugged in and the light gun and simply use the controller to move your character. Third-person viewpoint, bit more classic Resident Evil, 3D environments, 3D graphics, 3D models. An enemy appears, you want to shoot them, you draw the gun, you shoot the TV, and it goes to first person, and you do light gun shooting. When you're done with the shooting, you switch back to the controller and run around the environment again. Yep. Worked much, much better. And out of all the Survivor games, I really liked Dead Aim.
Was this PlayStation 2?
PlayStation 2. Now, this is set 4 years after the Raccoon City incident, and the Umbrella-owned ocean liner...
Get him back out in the water.
The Spencer Rain has been infested by the T-virus. Oh, dear. By one of their former employees, Morpheus D. Duval.
Oh.
What happened to Albert Wesker? Now you've got guys called Morpheus. Where's Albert when you need him?
Or barreled.
Now, you play as the typical... If this isn't a Bruce Willis character... Oh, I know exactly why I thought of Bruce Willis, because the character you play as is Bruce McGivern.
McGivern, you're off the case.
Alongside Chinese MSS agent Fong Ling.
MSS?
I don't know what that even stands for.
Like Secret Service or something?
But, yeah. It was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. Morpheus himself does end up infected with the TG virus, which is a combination of the two, and becomes basically a sexy zombie woman with high heel feet. Oh. And if that doesn't get the motor running on the ocean liner, I don't know what will. Dead Aim does have the best score so far of all the spin-offs, 66.74%. So, a bit better. Not much better, but a bit better. Still not excelling.
So of those 4, I knew of 2 and only played 1. So that goes to tell you... They probably weren't too popular.
They were not. The only other spin-offs we're going to talk about today is a series that I know you have at least seen me play, Resident Evil Outbreak and Outbreak File 2, which started off as an expansion and just got labelled as a sequel because that's how lazy sequels work. We've learnt that. Early on in their design for a multiplayer online cooperative Resident Evil experience, the game designer Mr. Funamizu he made a small multiplayer minigame in which the players must survive the longest time possible. They decided to remove what they'd done because it's failure to encourage teamwork.
Well, in a game of Survivor, you just have to outrun one person and you're okay.
That's exactly right. Who can survive the longest in a cooperative game? That sounds a bit too competitive for it. Basically, players would instinctively run away from the zombie hordes and rather would be slaughtered than to help one another. Yep. Completely undermining the whole concept. They had to start from scratch and they made it. Now, the thing is, just like Resident Evil Gun Survivor was not able to be using a pistol in the Americas, with Outbreak in Europe and Australia, you couldn't even play it online. The PS2 had the ability to have a modem purchased for it, an add-on for the console, to run on amazing 56k internet at the time, but they just decided it was in the too hard basket, and European, they got like 12 countries, 12 languages to work on. You can't get that all working online. It's impossible. So
sounds messy.
They were adamant that they would at least try to find a way to solve that problem in time for release. Spoiler, they didn't.
Did not.
And, of course, the risk of any online multiplayer game, servers were shut down in 2007 in America and elsewhere in Japan in 2012. So you can't even play it online. But private servers were brought back from the dead from 2014 onwards. You could play Resident Evil Outbreak online if you would wish to.
Right now?
If you want to.
Okay, well, you might be able to join the 3 other people doing that right now around the world.
Perfect. 4-player co-op. That's exactly what it's built for. This game had very small inventory management. You can only hold 4 items.
Oh, that's brutal.
There is no pausing. If you're accessing your menu, it's
the game continues.
Hey, we're live, pal. So the game continues. The loading screens were my biggest problem with this game. You went to one room to another. Oh. It took like 10, 11, 12 seconds to load.
It was long.
Agony. Absolute agony. I loved Outbreak.
I can recall the subtitles didn't match the audio. So you'd say, come here, and it would say, like, hurry along as the subtitle or something like that.
They did not want to put voice chat in because they thought it would ruin the environment. So they gave you basic commands, basic requests for help. Come here, stop. But yes, the dialogue, what would be said, never lined up with what the subtitle said. Blame Europe and their 12 languages, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, Resident Evil Outbreak 1 had 5 events that you could do, 5 scenarios.
Is that the one where you start off like in a bar or something?
The first one starts off in a bar with the original outbreak happening.
Yep.
You then have Below Freezing Point, which takes place in the underground laboratory, featured in Resident Evil 2. I always liked revisiting these places. You have The Hive, which is in the Raccoon General Hospital, also featured in Resident Evil 3.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to mention, in the basement of that hospital is the Hunter Gamma, which is basically the hunter, which can already one-hit kill you. But the Gamma is a frog hunter and can just eat you whole. And I can't tell you how many of my no first aid spray runs ended because I got eaten by a Hunter Gamma.
I was going to say, speaking of the lack of save earlier, I did die at one point trying to do a speed run through that in trying to get the epilogues and died at that hospital. Mm-hmm. Very frustrating.
Very frustrating. The 4th scenario in Outbreak 1 is the Apple Inn Hotel. Pretty cool. It's on fire, though, so it's not that cool. And Decision is the final unlockable scenario where you can just escape or you can try and manufacture a cure and heal each person. It takes bloody forever to make one, and if you want to get everyone cured, you need 4, and if you want to take an extra one to get the best possible ending, you need to make 5. You have a time limit. Everyone's infected when you play Outbreak, so you slowly get more infected. You hit 100% infection, you're dead, and you come back as a zombie, which is good for multiplayer, not so good for single player like I played. But, you know, that game does excel in its variety of scenarios. And then Outbreak File 2 has probably the more amusing set.
Amusing how? The topics that get covered or the locations that you're in?
More locations. I mean, your first one starts off at the Raccoon City Zoo.
Oh.
Where you have, I mean, we've already had zombie dogs, zombie worms, leeches, spiders, snakes, everything. We're starting to run out of what things to have as opposition in these games. So why not an elephant?
Oh, that's doesn't sound like it's easy to take down.
Who is basically the nemesis in trunk form, because he follows you from area to area trying to attack you, and you can kill him, in which case he won't be the final boss of that scenario. The lion will be the zombie lion.
Oh.
What more could you ask for? It's pretty fun. The second scenario is Underbelly, featured in a subway station. You got to get a train working because there's always a bloody train in games.
Yep.
And this is where I think they started to run out of ideas because you're opposed by the Gigabyte.
Oh.
A giant flea.
Oh.
A giant flea. I think a giant flea would still be like the size of a matchbox.
Oh, I was going to... Yeah.
But it's like the size of an elephant.
Oh.
So, not the best. The third scenario was a little bit different because you were at a cabin in the woods where you meet a man named Albert. Not Wesker, though. Albert Lester.
Oh. That sounds way too close.
It does sound a bit close. Basically, he carries an axe around and tries to kill you as you play through this scenario.
Yes, I think that scenario sounds better than the zoo.
A little bit different. You go back to the Raccoon City Police Department in the 4th, called Desperate Times, where you try to escape the police station again for the 4th time so far. And the final one set in an underground umbrella laboratory, of course, with a tyrant in his little underpants. Outbreak scores an average. Now, what's a good score for you? What would you think is still a good score?
Like a pass mark. Like that was a pretty good. Oh, a 70?
A 70? Well, it got 69.99.
Yeah, so that's thumbs down.
69.99%. I want to submit a review and just give it a
You'd have to give it a pretty high to get that average to bump up, though, wouldn't you?
It's so close. Outbreak File 2 is one of those more of the same sequels. 62% for that one. Not as good. I probably enjoyed it more.
We did enjoy playing them, but yeah, they're not in the same league as, say, a Resident Evil 2 or 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Code Veronica, given the scores it got.
The spin-offs obviously inferior. That's everything that came out on consoles before the GameCube. The series has continued on, again with bad spin-offs, but the series itself has
high sales. I
High
must say,
sales.
after Resident Evil 4 onwards, there's been some high sales of the game. So they're still popular. There's obviously a new wave of people playing them as well, not just people that enjoyed it from the 90s. So, hey, it's still getting lots. And we talked about it being a catalyst for the zombie genre, the survival horror genre. There's been plenty of games after that, of which you've enjoyed, say Dead Rising, for instance.
Absolutely.
There's been TV shows, Walking Dead, movies, Shaun of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, things like that.
Lots and lots of entertainment with grisly, decaying flesh coming your way, no doubt, from every direction. That's basically what an outbreak surrounding you is, right?
Yes.
Resident Evil classic games, do you have a favourite? Were they a primary entry port into horror gaming for you? Did you learn how to speak English from listening to the voice acting in Resident Evil 1? If so, we really want to hear from you. But to let us know what your memories are of Resident Evil Classic. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's been so much fun.
It has been fun. I am very tired, which apologies if I spoke very slowly, especially if you're listening to me at half? No.
You can't even do math. 1.5 is slower than 1, right?
If you're listening to me at half speed, I must sound really, really bad right now.
You will sound about as intoxicated as the Shaun of the Dead developers were.
When they had green herb.
Let's wrap this up quickly. We've been rambling on for far too long. There's a nuclear bomb probably about to drop down on the top of this podcast.
Just like in
because
Raccoon
we've been
City.
talking about so much zombie-related stuff. Umbrella has heard. They are dealing with us as we speak. There's probably Agent Hunk on the way to deal with us.
Who do you think would survive longer in a zombie apocalypse, you or me?
Well, reportedly, I'd be the first to die.
Oh. Well, you heard it
That's
here
what our
first, guys. I'll be
sister-in-law-
here next week.
Our sister-in-law...
Unfortunately, Brendo won't be.
Our sister-in-law from the south of Africa has declared that I would be the first to die. And I'm furious with that because I have the most experience in zombie-related media and I refuse to stand for that.
Well, then you only get the knife. We get the guns.
I'll do a knife run. That's fine. I had a dream once. Now, this is Resident Evil related, but I had a dream that our high school crew got teleported by... I must have had a fever or something. I had a bit of too much of the green herb. We were teleported by a wizard, and we had to split up into teams to do each Resident Evil game in real life.
Yeah.
And I volunteered to do one
Yeah.
because no one else knew how to do it.
You'd smash one.
I sent you to do 3.
Yep.
I think we sent people we didn't like into
It's a
the
2.
second one because it's the longest, and we're like, they won't survive anyway. But it was a fun little dream I had, and I woke up going, what the heck is wrong with me? Gaming goals time, Mr. Steve. Gaming goals. Do you have any gaming goals? You have 2 children now.
I do.
There's no time for games. There's no time for sleep.
There's no time for that. There's no time for sleep. There's no time for games.
I basically had to pay his wife cash to get just a bit of time to record a podcast with you. That sounded far seedier than I expected it to. We may or may not leave that in. I don't know. I'll leave it at Jem's discretion. Will there be any gaming for the good brother, Mr. Steve? Or are we stuck in nostalgia land
Before
forever?
I'm a guest host on this again, or until next week?
Or, no,
Because I can guarantee you there'll be nothing next week.
we'll give you some leniency. Are you playing anything on your mobile phone, on PlayStation, anything? Are there plans? Will you beat Metal Gear Solid 5 anytime soon? This poor man doesn't even have time to watch the
Man, do you know what my
video
problem
of the
is?
plot summary.
The problem is, I get excited, I get, a couple of hours in or a few sessions in, and then I just can't commit.
Family life does take
Family
a bit of time.
life.
Maybe you should do a trial separation for a bit.
Oh,
Just to
you
clear
better
the backlog.
You better cut that out.
Well, I'll take the reins on this then. I'm going to be playing Resident Evil 7. I do want to finish that before the end of October, and I'm kind of running out of time. Spooky month is almost over, and I have commitments. I have commitments in my gaming
You have
timeline.
to finish that by
October.
the end of October.
I would like to.
So in a couple of days.
I would like to. It may not happen. The Outer Worlds, though, I'm looking forward to diving headfirst into that amazing game. Yeah, it's pretty much just going to be them, I think. And a bit of yeast on the side.
Yeast.
Yeast.
That sounds like a
Resident Evil
meal. You ask for a bit of yeast on the side. Not too much yeast.
It's just a yeast extract. Good old Vegemite.
That's a Vegemite joke.
That's Australian humour. When shall we have you back, good brother, Mr. Steve?
I'm happy to come back whenever you want me. As long as I'm producing the goods, I'm happy to come back.
You are the primary go-to man when I'm talking about PlayStation 1 era. I tell you what would be a fun little experiment that you brought up once.
Mm-hmm.
You dug up your old memory card from the PS1. We should boot up a console, have a look at what saves are on there, what our reasoning was for saving certain things, and have another trip through memory lane.
There would have to be a Resident Evil 3 save on there. No, there wouldn't. Yeah, no, I reckon there would be. I reckon I would have kept them because I would have liked to reread those epilogues. I'm sure
now
I would
you
have
just
kept
look them up on the internet.
yeah.
Back in our day...
Back then, you couldn't.
Well, you probably...
Man, we didn't even touch on the Mercenaries minigames.
All right, if you could only play... If you had your kids away for a week, which Resident Evil game would you play out of everything we've mentioned today?
I think... I'm going to say number 3.
3?
I don't know why, but I'm going to say number 3 just for a bit of nemesis. Yeah.
I just got to get it over
I
with
I would have said 2, but I guess because I've been playing the remake
6 months ago.
Maybe, I don't know, I think Nemesis. I think especially if they made a remake as well. Yeah, I reckon number 3.
Well, you can add that to your backlog because you still got the second one to play. So deal with it. Let's get out of here, man. I'm going to go probably play something Resident Evil related. Not classic, though.
No.
Just number 7.
Number 7. All right, well, don't get too scared.
Oh, I will. Hold me.
Oh. No, I'm going to leave the booth now.
Hold me.
I'm getting out. I'm getting out of here.
Chowski.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.
Shaka Khan.